Hi class, welcome to the second part of our review lecture video wherein we will discuss the carbohydrate chemistry. I hope before kayong nanood ng ating review for this lecture video, you were able to read the book, your modules, as well as may mga na take down notes na kayo. Kasi itong discussion na to, it will focus more on the pathway na hindi natin na-discuss on period 1 and then mga additional informations na lang to that will be helpful for your upcoming periodic exam. Mas maganda na hindi ito yung starting point nyo sa pag-review. Ano na lang to, parang supplemental videos para mas ma-enrich pa yung mga kaalaman nyo when it comes to the biochemistry. So for our second part, we will discuss the carbohydrate chemistry. For the first part, we're done discussing the enzymology or all about your enzymes. For the carbohydrate chemistry, I hope na panood or nabasa ninyo yung mga basics when it comes to the carbohydrate chemistry because for here, dadaanan na lang natin each and every pathway in a way na shortcut na siya. I-discuss natin yung pagkakasunod-sunod but the meaning, I hope, nabasa niyo na siya. So let us just discuss the carbohydrates. Please do take note that the glycogen is the term we use for the storage form of the glucose. Again, the storage form of the glucose is what we call the glycogen and it is synthesized by your liver. So unahin na natin yung mga terms na importante as we head on to the discussion. Number 1 is the glycolysis. Glycolysis came from the Greek word glykos or your glycose meaning splitting, losing, or the breakdown. So coming from the root word glyco, di ba? Glycogen, meaning the sugar, and the lysis, it is the breakdown. Okay, so as the meaning serves, it means that it is the breakdown of your glucose. Please do take note also that the glycolysis happens, it happens or it can be found in all cells of your body. So lahat ng cell na meron ka sa iyong katawan, mayroong glycolysis na nangyayari dyan. Okay? And it is particularly happening in your cell, in your cytoplasm, or in your cytosol. Sa cytosol po ha, sa cytoplasm, particularly in the cytosol. What else? Ano pa ba mga pwede nating sabihin kay glycolysis? Si glycolysis, it is a unique pathway. Bakit po? Since it can utilize oxygen, yung mga aerobic functions natin, it uses oxygen. But it functions in the absence of oxygen. Okay? In an anaerobic setup. Okay? Bakit po naging unique pathway si glycolysis? Because it is a unique pathway since it can utilize oxygen. It can utilize oxygen and functions in the absence of your oxygen or what we call the anaerobic. So another additional information with regards to your glycolysis, it functions to produce energy in the form of your adenosine triphosphate or your ATP. And intermediate form can be converted to other substances like your amino acids and your fatty acids as well. Okay po. So, ang ating glycolysis, maraming mga functions underlying the glycolysis. So, daanan natin siya isa-isa later on. So, for the glycolysis, pag nagkaroon ka ng breakdown of glucose, ibig sabihin ang glucose level mo sa katawan, it will be decreased. Okay, next term, this is what we call the gluconeogenesis, meaning it is the formation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. Example natin yung mga fatty acid and then your amino acids. So coming from the root word gluco and then yung neogenesis, parang I think this came from the Bible, meaning to form. Okay, and then the glucose level in your body in the gluconeogenesis, it has an increased level of glucose. Next, when we're dealing with glycogenesis, it means that it is the formation of glycogen, meaning you have decreased glucose level in your body. Mahalaga pong tandaan natin itong mga to. Next is the glycogenolysis, meaning it is the breakdown of your glycogen. Ibig sabihin, meron kang increased glucose level sa iyong katawan. Next term, it is the lipogenesis, meaning the formation of the lipid, meaning you will have decreased glucose level in your body. Ang pinag-uusapan po natin dito, particularly glucose. Glucose po ang pinag-uusapan. Next is the lipolysis, meaning the breakdown of the lipid, meaning you have increased glucose level in your body. So next slide, please. So ito na, didiscuss na natin yung pagkarami-raming pathway na dadaanan natin at napakakomplikado sa ating biochemistry. Kasi sa inyong medicine proper, yung mga may gusto pong mag-proceed to medicine at maging doctor, meron akong alam doon na kung saan si biochemistry kasi isa siyang major talagang subject and foundation subject when it comes to the medicine. So tinatanong sila each pathway kung ilan yung na-oxidize na reaction. Okay, ganun po ka thorough ang discussion ng mga pathway when it comes to the medicine. But here in our medical laboratory science, papadaliin natin siya in a way na alam nyo lang yung nangyayari each and every step. And alam nyo yung mga enzymes involved in each and every step and yung mga products nila. Okay, so we will begin with the pentose phosphate pathway or your PPP. Okay, pakinig maigid. The pentose phosphate pathway is an alternative pathway to glycolysis and TCA cycle for oxidation of the glucose. It is a shunt of glycolysis. It is also known as a hexose monophosphate shunt or your phosphogluconate pathway. Pakitandaan ng ating mga key informations mentioned. Next, it occurs in the cytoplasm both for prokaryotes and then the eukaryotes. Pentose phosphate pathway starts with glucose and it is a multi-steps reaction. Okay, kung naguguluhan pa, ano pa ba yung mga additional information natin na pwedeng idagdag for pentose phosphate pathway? So nakakabulol siya. So the definition is that it is a cytosolic route for complete oxidation or utilization of glucose, a hexose to produce pentose phosphate, NADPH, and CO2. So sila NADPH, mapapansin nyo talaga siya later on sa ating pinaka-pathway. Makikita nyo na mababanggit siya paulit-ulit. It is called a pentose phosphate because the objective or function is to produce your pentose phosphate. And then other names, marami po siyang other names. We have your hexose monophosphate shunt or your HMP, the phosphogluconate pathway. It can also be called as Warburg-Dickens pathway, and then it is also called the direct oxidative pathway. So the functions of your pentose phosphate pathway, it functions as it is a generation of your NADPH, provision of ribose residues, provision of mechanism for the metabolic utilization of 5-carbon sugars ingested as food, and lastly, it functions with glycolysis and tricarboxylic acid cycle or your TCA to produce the reducing equivalents of NADPH and pentose intermediates. So ano ba yung sinasabi mo, ma'am, na pagkarami-raming functions and other names of the pentose phosphate pathway? So ito siya. Marami pa po siyang functions. Daanan lang po muna natin siya isa-isa bago natin pinakadaanan yung pinaka-pathway. Again, your pentose phosphate pathway is an alternative route for the metabolism of your glucose. But please do not forget that it does not lead to the formation of ATP. Again, the pentose phosphate pathway is an alternative route for the metabolism of your glucose, but it does not lead to the formation of ATP. The pentose pathway, also called as the phosphogluconate pathway, and the HMS or HMP has 3 major functions. Ano po ba yung pinaka-major function ng ating pentose phosphate pathway sa katawan kung bakit ang dami po natin kailangan kabisaduhin, ma'am? Okay, so it functions as number 1, the formation of NADPH, like what we've mentioned, for the synthesis of your fatty acids and steroids, yung mga ating lipids or yung ating mga fats. Okay, mahalaga po na meron tayong pentose phosphate pathway para po ma-form yung mga NADPH that are necessarily to synthesize the fatty acids and then the steroids. Mga steroids natin, may mga hormones din po tayo dyan na involved. Okay, so mahalaga yung pentose phosphate pathway or your PPP in the formation of NADPH that are necessary to synthesize these following molecules such as your fatty acids and steroids. Next, it functions as a maintenance of reduced glutathione for antioxidant activity. So yung mga glutathione natin, they serve as an antioxidant activity para hindi masira ng tuluyan yung mga cells natin. Okay, nagre-regenerate na mga yan, yung mga cells natin. So important na meron tayong mga mga substances such as your glutathione to reduce the breaking or yung tuluyang pagkasira ng ating mga cells. So that's why we will be needing this PPP as a maintenance of reduced glutathione for antioxidant activity. Last function of the PPP is the synthesis of ribose for the nucleotide and nucleic acid formation. Yes, important po si PPP for the synthesis of the ribose that are integral part or that are necessary for the nucleotide and nucleic acid formation. So your PPP, meron po siyang two sequence of reactions that are divided into two types. We have your oxidative reaction phase and non-oxidative reaction phase. For the oxidative reaction phase, let us just read the description. The first four reactions are irreversible and oxidative. Meaning yung unang apat daw na reaction na dadaanan natin later on, irreversible meaning pag dumaan na dun sa step na yon, pag nag-go through na dun sa phase na yon, hindi na siya nababalikan or hindi na pwedeng balikan. And it is oxidative in a way na involve yung oxygen. Okay, the first four reactions that we will be discussing is irreversible and oxidative, in which glucose molecule is oxidized twice, generating two molecules of NADPH, and glucose is converted to ribose 5-phosphate. So marami man po siyang daraanan dito, pero ang goal lang is ma-convert siya into a ribulose 5-phosphate. And then tsaka pa lang po susunod si non-oxidative reaction. So ma'am, ano po ba ang relevance ng ating oxidative phase sa mga sinasabi niyo pong glycolysis and other formation of nucleotides and nucleic acids? Di-discuss po natin yan. Okay? So mahalaga na kabisado niyo siya. Mahalaga na alam niyo yung terms at kabisado niya. Kasi by the way, ilang steps lang naman to. Ito mga nakaganyan to, ito lang naman yung mga enzymes involved natin. And these are the products. Okay, so we will go through each and every step. So for the oxidative phase, the initial reaction is the conversion of your glucose, okay, from glucose, di ba? Nagkaroon ka ng glycolysis, nag-breakdown na yung glucose mo to G6PD or what we call the glucose 6-phosphate pa lang naman. Okay, so yung glycolysis, pag na-breakdown na siya, once naka-eat ka na ng mga food that contains glucose po ito, particularly glucose, it will be converted into glucose 6-phosphate. And then dito napapasok yung ating pentose phosphate pathway. Si citric acid cycle and then yung mga electron transport chain na yan, later on na po yan. But ang main focus natin dito is from the glycolysis, the breaking down of your glucose, it will be converted to glucose 6-phosphate and then doon napapasok si pentose phosphate pathway. Sunod na si oxidative and non-oxidative phase. So for the initial reaction, this reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme hexokinase. Ano po yung pinaka-enzyme na involved? Hexokinase ang tawag doon. And a molecule of ATP is utilized. This reaction is actually the primary step of the glycolysis. Sorry, excuse me. So, meron tayong glucose, for example, dito. Pag na-breakdown na siya, mako-convert na siya into glucose 6-phosphate. Hindi lang kita dito sa taas. Pero, ano yung enzyme involved for that one? That is what we call the hexokinase. Okay, this reaction is actually the primary step of the glycolysis. Pakitandaan po, nag-umpisa tayo sa glucose and then mako-convert sa glucose 6-phosphate. Ma'am, ulit-ulit ka at ano yung enzyme involved? That is what we call your hexokinase. However, meron din pong mga molecules such as ATP. Ginagamitan din po siya ng ATP. Okay, so next, pwede na tayo mag-proceed from the glycolysis, glucose 6-phosphate. So next step na po tayo. Okay, yung first conversion of glucose 6-phosphate to 6-phosphogluconolactone. Again, first reaction po siya, pero initial po siya. Initial reaction, parang zero reaction. And then the first reaction, dito napapasok yung conversion of glucose 6-phosphate to 6-phosphogluconolactone. Nakakabulol. 6-phosphogluconolactone. Okay, pakibanggit ulit. Conversion of glucose 6, nung naging glucose 6-phosphate na siya, okay, it will be converted to 6-phosphogluconolactone. This is the first reaction. Yung kanina zero reaction, initial reaction yon. Okay, ito na yung first reaction mo. Glucose to 6-phosphogluconolactone. And then this reaction is catalyzed by an enzyme. Anong tawag dun sa enzyme na yon? That is what we call the glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase or your G6PD. Naririnig na po ba si G6PD? In the presence of magnesium ion. Magnesium ion. Magnesium ion. Okay, paulit-ulit ka ma'am. First reaction is the conversion. Lagyan lang natin ng ating pen. Okay, sa zero reaction, meron kang glucose. Naging glucose 6-phosphate. And then ang first reaction mo ay ito na. With the help of the enzyme, your G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, in the presence of magnesium ion, in this reaction, a molecule of NADPH is produced. Okay, tingnan po sa left side, nakaproduce na po siya ng NADPH. 0,1, ito na yung product niya. Okay, so you can try it on your own. Kung unti-unti nyo siya nakakabisado based dun sa paulit-ulit ni ma'am, isulat niyo siya without looking at your screens, and then isulat niyo yung nagiging reaction. Okay, so did that help? Yes po. So next, second reaction na tayo. Sulatan lang ulit natin si zero reaction, si first reaction, the enzyme involved, and also the product. Next naman is the second reaction. It is the conversion of your 6-phosphogluconolactone to 6-phosphogluconate. Okay, nakakalito, phosphogluconolactone, naging 6-phosphogluconate na siya. This is your second reaction. Again, meron na naman pong enzyme involved. This reaction is a hydrolysis reaction catalyzed by your hydrolase enzyme, or what we call the gluconolactonase. Okay? May naging hydrolysis reaction po siya kasi nga natanggal yung ating water. Okay, nakikita nyo dun sa product niya on the left side, but the enzyme that helps the reaction is the enzyme on the right side. Next naman, patuloy pa rin tayo mag-drawing. Zero reaction, first reaction, second reaction, and then the third reaction, ang daming reaction ma'am, is the conversion of your 6-phosphogluconate to ribose phosphate. Okay, ito na po yung tinatawag natin third reaction. This reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme 6-phosphogluconate dehydrogenase to produce the 6-keto-phosphogluconate, which undergoes the carboxylation to produce your ribulose 5-phosphate. So titingnan po dito. Okay, ito po yung mga naging product niya. In this reaction, a molecule of NADPH is generated. So nakita niyo naman doon sa product, nagkaroon na tayo ng NADPH. Okay po. So nagsimula tayo dun sa initial reaction up until our third reaction. So again, yun lang po yun. Basically, yun lang talaga siya. From the zero reaction hanggang third reaction, well, the goal is from the glucose, naging ribulose 5-phosphate na siya. Tapos tsaka napapasok yung non-oxidative reaction natin. Pakitandaan po na for the oxidative phase, yung mga first 4 phases natin or first 4 processes, they are irreversible in a way na hindi na pwedeng bumalik pa. Wala nang balikan. Parang ganon, okay? Pagka punta ka na sa initial reaction, tuloy-tuloy na yon. Hindi na po siya na-reverse or hindi na siya naibabalik. Meron po tayong additional note dito kung natatandaan or naririnig na sa G6PD. Okay? Isa po siyang test na ginagawa for the newborn screening. Sorry, I think noong mga panahon natin hindi pa uso yung newborn screening na kung saan involved si G6PD. Ngayon kasama na po siya sa tinetest for the newborns. Kung alam nyo, yung tinetest doon sa may ankle ng bata, tapos nilaglalagay ng blood doon sa parang paper, tapos itetest siya kung at that early age, mati-check na kung may mga deficiencies ba yung baby. So, yun ang kinaganda ng mga advancements natin, ng innovations natin sa ating technology, kasi maiiwasan na yung paglaki ng tao, tsaka palang lalabas or pag nag-manifest na yung symptoms, tsaka pala makikita yung mga deficiencies. Maganda na at the early age, makikita na yung mga deficiencies ng bata. So sa G6PD, kasama po siya sa newborn screening. I think lumalabas sa ating board exam, G6PD. Tapos ang mostly nagkakaroon nito yung mga lalaki. Okay, they inherit the G6PD deficiency. Tapos si G6PD po kasi, it is an integral part of our RBC. Okay? Once na nagkaroon ng damage sa RBC, marami siyang mga repercussions. Katulad nung mga sakit natin sa sickle cell, di ba? Nagkakaroon ng parang shrinking ng cells, and then maraming mga magmamanifest na symptoms doon sa patient. So this G6 deficiency, same din, na it is an integral part of the RBC in a way na pagka meron kang problema doon sa G6PD mo, magmamanifest din yung mga symptoms. And then maraming bawal dun sa patient. Yung mga soy, bawal yung mga yan. Okay? Kung ano man po yung mga signs and symptoms, pwede nyo namang i-google kung ano yung nangyayari doon sa patient na merong G6PD deficiency. Wala siyang treatment, if I'm not mistaken, yes. But parang meron lang silang maintenance or may mga mini-maintain lang sila na bawal at yung mga pwede para lang ma-keep or ma-maintain yung kanilang katawan na hindi over regress yung kanilang sakit. So going back for the G6PD deficiency, it may lead to resistance to malaria. So the silver lining, if you have a G6PD deficiency, hindi ka tatabla ng malaria. Okay, kasi nga si malaria, okay, galing po yan sa ating mga parasites na mga plasmodium na kung saan ang tinatarget nila si RBC. So kung may problema kaya ka sa G6PD ng iyong RBC, hindi ka tatabla ng malaria. Yun lang ang silver lining. Okay? So this is the non-oxidative phase, kung saan siya yung kasunod ng oxidative phase of our Pentose phosphate pathway, but hindi na po natin siya i-discuss much further kasi medyo complicated siya. Pakibasa na lang po yung non-oxidative reaction natin. And basically, ito lang talaga yung pentose phosphate pathway. So it will start from the step 1. Ito yung pinaka-step 1. Okay? Yung step 2 mo. Okay, nagkaroon ka na ng hydrolysis and then nag-formation na ng NADPH. Step 3, yes, it is involved in the DNA and RNA formation. Like what we've mentioned, your pentose phosphate pathway is included or is an integral part of the formation of your nucleotides kasi nga mahalaga dun si ribose 5 or ribulose 5 phosphate. And then, nakalimutan ko, sorry. Going back lang kayo, non-oxidative reaction. It is an oxidative reaction is followed by series of reversible sugar phosphate interconversion reaction. Okay, nagpapalit-palit lang yung sila sugar mo dyan kung mapapansin mo. And then uulit lang po sila ulit into glycolysis. Okay, ganun lang po siya. Basically, ganun lang yung pinaka-mechanism or the function of your pentose phosphate pathway. Pero hindi po tayo natatapos dyan kasi meron pa tayong TCA cycle, meron pa tayong Krebs cycle. So, quick facts lang. Pwede po itong lumabas sa inyong mga examinations, sa inyong board examination or on your period 1 examination. Quick facts, number 1, whole blood glucose is 10 to 15% lower than serum or plasma. Okay? The serum must be separated within 30 minutes kasi kapag whole blood pa din po siya and if you will be subjecting it into a chemistry test, may tendency na bumababa yung inyong mga sugar doon sa serum. So, ibig sabihin, imbes na ang sugar level mo talaga, for example, is around 107, hanggat hindi nyo pa po siya centrifuge, yes, this is under the pre-analytical failures, parang gano'n, mga pre-analytical phases, may tendency na bumababa yung sugar niya dun sa serum. So, ibig sabihin, hindi na po siya reliable. Hindi na siya yung totoong bilang talaga ng sugar mo sa katawan. Kasi, doon pa lang sa centrifugation, nagkaroon na ng pagkakamali. Meron ka na ng pre-analytical errors. In a way na nabawasan. Kasi nga, nagpa-function pa din po siya doon sa test tube nyo. Nagkakaroon ng mga glycolysis, nagko-convert siya. So, hindi nyo muna nakuha yung totoong number ng iyong serum glucose level. Number 2, the fasting recommendation for the fasting blood sugar or your FPS is around 6 to 8 hours plus. Please do take note na iba-iba po siya per institution, but as per our textbook, it must be 6 to 8 hours. And then for the CSF, it has 60 to 70% of your plasma glucose.